we've been getting a lot of questions about what does Medicare look like, what is happening in the Medicare space. And I think it's important to share one of the things that I wanted to kind of talk about today is there's been a lot of changes to Medicare for a long time. Back in 2006, we saw the Medicare Modernization Act that happened. We saw the Affordable Cares Act that happened. We've seen recently the Inflation Reduction Act. And so there's a lot of changes that have been happening. I think lunch might be here. They're filtering in the back, I can see them. There's been a lot of changes that have happened and a lot of things. The Inflation Reduction Act, one of the big things that we're seeing with that, starting January 1st of 2025, many of you may have heard of the coverage gap. Some people have heard of it as the donut hole. That is in fact going away starting January 1st of 2025, and that's part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And so a lot of changes that have been happening in that regard. And so as we move into new administration that's coming in, I think it's reasonable to say that there could be changes, right? We don't know exactly what those are. Typically the changes take some time, and you'll be aware of what's happening. The Inflation Reduction Act actually, they've been working on that for a couple of years, and now we're just starting to see some of the things that are coming from it. And so, very important information. I always tell people when we get people that ask questions about it, I'm not telling you don't worry, but I think it's important to tell you to stay informed. Be an informed consumer. Being here today is a great avenue of that. Our agency, we attend Capitol Conference every February. And so we go to Washington, D.C., we meet with legislators, we talk about what's happening in Medicare, what's happening in those spaces, things that are coming to and things that are on their tables, if you will. And we try our best to keep our consumers educated about what's happening, and so that would be my biggest piece of advice. But in general, Medicare, for most folks, is when you become 65 years old, you become eligible for Medicare. There are some exceptions to that. If individuals happen to be on disability or some other conditions, there could be some exceptions. But 65 and older is typically when an individual is eligible for Medicare. What we suggest, one of the things that Lisa asked for me to kind of address is for individuals that are becoming eligible for Medicare, so individuals that are not quite yet 65, I would suggest 3 months prior to turning 65. You typically become eligible the first of the month of your birthday. So for example, if your birthday is February 15th, most individuals would become eligible for Medicare on February 1st of that 65th birthday. If they're on the first of the month, they get a whole nother month, so they become eligible 1 month prior. And so Medicare is a very complex in regards to all of the time frames, all of the things you need to know, all of those things. And one of the biggest suggestions I have for consumers is work with a local agent. You're happy to work with me, but that's not a requirement. We have a lot of incredible local agents here in our community that can meet with you, discuss your needs, discuss what options you have. One of the things that our agency really stresses the importance of is educating consumers and giving them the right to vote and allowing them to determine what's the best decision for them. No one knows their situation better than themselves, and so knowing what those options look like is really important. But one of the things I would suggest is talking with someone early, and also just talking with an agent when it comes time for those annual enrollments or you move or things like that, just to stay up on top of it and what's going on. I could go on for 3 days talking about Medicare, maybe even 3 weeks. Does anyone have any questions? I love it. Well, I'm not going anywhere, and so I'm here. I'm happy to Any specifics? Yeah.
Can you tell people, is it something that they need to come and pay for to have a consultation with you guys, or can you explain?
That's a great
the
question.
process?
Very good question. So it does not. No agent. Agents are actually brokerage. If they're a licensed agent, they are actually compensated from insurance companies. So from a consumer, you should never get charged to meet with an agent to discuss those benefit options. Great question.
So they can call your office or whatever,
Yeah, absolutely.
appointment?
Absolutely. And I will tell you, from our stance, I can't speak for others, but from our stance, even if you are not a specific client of ours and you have a question, we are committed to helping any individual regardless of trying to help you, educate you on what those options are. We have a client service team that actually, they will call carriers with you, they will call providers' offices with you and try to get to the bottom of what may be happening to try to help resolve whatever your questions may be.
What do you see as the maybe 3 biggest mistakes, kind of generally, obviously, that people make when they come in saying, boy, I wish I had done, or no,
Yeah.
whatever it is?
The first one I would tell you is make sure you're prepared. Give yourself some time before you turn 65 to make sure that you, if you were to come in on the last day of the month before you become eligible, it could be very challenging to make all of those things happen. So give yourself some time, speak with an agent. You know, within 3 months of becoming 65 is when you really, I recommend doing that. There's a lot of variances that go into that. An individual that may be taking Social Security could automatically be enrolled in Medicare Part A and B. If they're not taking Social Security, they may have to actually enroll in Part A and B. There's a lot that can go into that. If you're in employer coverage, there's a lot of variables that can kind of go into what that looks like. So making sure that you provide yourself with adequate time as you prepare for that very important topic. One of the other things I would say that we hear quite a bit, I don't know if there's really any order of these, but your situation could be very different than your neighbor's situation, or your brother, or your mom, or whatever it may be. And so I think it's important. I hear a lot of times where people will say, I don't understand why my friend has this or has that. And I think it's important to really understand the differences and all of the options that go into Medicare, and understand that your situation, maybe your health, your financial, there's a lot of different aspects into it, could be different than your friend or your neighbor. And so to keep that in mind, but also with that, to stay informed, because you may also qualify for some extra help or some different things. And so I would suggest asking the questions. That's my second one. The third one I would say is we get this a lot too. There's a lot of options to call phone numbers, and you may get a lot of phone calls from different places. And I would really suggest, my feedback to that is be cautious of that, because when you're giving your personal information through the phone to whoever it may be, you don't know that they have your best interest in hand. And so that would be one thing I would also set caution to. I don't know how many times we've met with individuals and they've brought in multiple cards and they've said, I answered the phone and I didn't know this happened and I somehow got signed up for this and I don't know what to do and all of those things. And so that would be my third piece, is just be cautious of that, and be cautious of providing your personal information through the phone, unless it's a trusted individual that you feel comfortable with.
You said if there's changes in your situation that would prompt coming back or asking additional questions, again, those major changes would be, you say, change in health status. What other changes?
Good question. So
trigger evaluation?
specifically, I would say, if something were to change with your income, that would be one. Individuals could qualify for some extra help. Individuals that move locations, that move outside of their area in which they're currently moving their address with Social Security, making sure that their plans are still adequate in their serving counties. there can be a various, anytime you may have, any questions of any sort, or something comes up and you're unsure about, or you're this or that, I would suggest calling one of these local agencies and just asking for some feedback and asking for some help.
And would this be a situation too, if you have a spouse or a child, somebody that isn't necessarily officially power of attorney, and we can have word on those issues, but a family member or a trusted friend that you want to be involved in the process, can you have a designee to also provide information or help or be involved in some capacity?
I think it's reasonable to say if you want to bring someone with you, of course, to discuss with that, you have the ability to do that. But if a person is unable or unwilling, that's when David, his portion may come into play, because those are HIPAA and all of those types of things come into play in that regard. So I'll let him manage that in a minute.
Why do you suppose so many Medicare supplementals are going with United Healthcare? It's like a monopoly over Medicare.
You're talking about Medicare supplements?
Supplemental insurance.
So I don't know if I could answer that question specifically, but I can tell you one thing about Medicare supplements that we are seeing. We are seeing over the course of this last year, we have seen significant increases in premiums paid per month. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One of the things we're seeing is there's actually, in fact, 12,000 people a day that are turning 65 and becoming eligible for Medicare. The second thing we're seeing with that is we're seeing COVID claims, of course, and then we're seeing post-COVID claims. And so what does that mean? Well, individuals may have put off some of those elective procedures like knee replacements, hip replacements, those types of things. And so we're seeing heightened medical costs, which in turn, we are hearing from forecasters that are telling us we may continue to see those premiums increase. In regards to your specific question, I'm not sure, I don't know specifically about the carrier, but I do know that there's quite a few different Medicare supplement companies that offer plans in our area, and so that's a good question. I'll look into that.
You know what what do they call it now? GEHA, DHA, Government Employees Health. For 3 years, DHA delayed it, joining United Healthcare. And this last year, they bit the bullet. As of January 1 of 24, we were bombarded with United Healthcare information, and it seems to change frequently, the terms and the options. And I think a lot of people probably struggle with that. If they do not have immediate advisors in there. So your role might become more important than you know.
Well, that's
Right.
good. That's good. I think I always say with Medicare, there's like an alphabet soup. There's just Medicare there's a lot that goes into it, and so you're exactly right. It is very complex, and so I do suggest talking with an agent, because here's the thing too, is that every year these rules and laws are changing in regards to even us as agents and what we do and what we have to do to be able to discuss plans with consumers. We are obligated by a lot of different compliance options that change year to year, and so very important to talk to those agents.